Mixing with Mike, plugin of the week. Comes from Waves. It's the StudioRack plugin. There is a pre-existing StudioRack plugin, but this replaces that one. And essentially, it's a plugin chainer that's designed to work with the SoundGrid system, but also works natively. It's a free plugin, so it comes with the V11 and Waves. And essentially, what you have are 8 plugin slots that you can open up, but it's so much more than that. Essentially, let's zoom in and kind of do a quick overview of the interface. So what we have here is the Waves toolbar, most of the things that you're normally used to seeing, the A and B setup, again, like you're normally used to seeing. If you have a Waves SoundGrid system, either I/O or if you have a server where you can offload the processing, this is the way that you would do that, and it would show you the status here of your Waves SoundGrid system. What we have here is a phase for the input, a gain control for the input, and an output level control. You'll see a dBFS meter here, gain reduction. That's a cumulative gain reduction for whatever dynamic plugin processing that you see that's posted in here. There's an on-off, which will turn the whole rack on or off. And essentially what you have here is the ability to add plugins. Okay, so you can add plugins, and then we'll go over these 2 different modes, which really make this interesting and kind of expand on it. There's 3 basic views for the whole thing here. This rack view, which will show you the rack, so you can add plugins, gives you 8 slots. Macros, the macros can be assigned to any plugin parameter, which makes it easy for automation, and it can be assigned to multiple plugin parameters. So you can connect this to any plugin parameter and then easily assign it in your DAW to write automation and then automate those settings, multiple ones at once with a single macro. And then there's an all mode, which shows you both, which is really how I think it should default when you open it up. But this is the way we have it here. All right, so now when we work with this, you can work the normal way that we always work, right? So let's say I wanted to add an SSL compressor to the mix here. I could just go and add the SSL compressor, and I would have an SSL compressor here. Right, and then let's just say I wanted to add an EQ. This is just on the mix bus here, so maybe I just call up the HEQ, and then I would have an HEQ, and this would show up here. I can move the slots around, right? So if I wanted to swap them around, I could swap them around. All of that other sort of stuff, normal stuff that you see. You could turn them on, off here. You can turn them off individually, right, from here. You have the individual plugin windows. If you want, you can actually pin them, so you could have multiple ones open at the same time, right? And so now every time you open this up, you'll get both sets of plugins, so you can watch them or take a look at them and work with them together, or all the windows open, right? And then you have a close all button that allows you to operate within there. So within this, essentially what you have is you have the individual toolbar and the ability to load presets for all of the individual plugins. And then you can load in full processing chains that you either create yourself, or you can load existing ones that have come from, different artists that they've given you here, and some factory presets and stuff like that. Where this really gets interesting, and where I think this gets to be super cool, is when you start to get into the 2 types of split modes that you can run with it. Parallel split is a great one, because what it allows you to do in parallel is to run multiple instances. So it'll run the mix bus in parallel, or whatever, the audio passing through will come in parallel. So I could leave one completely unprocessed, for example, and then on a second one, say I wanted to just call in, for example, just like a Puig child, and then I'm going to load in, like a parallel compression kind of setting here. Right, so I'm just going to load this up, and then what I have is a fader control. So with each one of these racks, I have an independent gain control, right, for the input. I have a fader for the output level. You can see some meters there showing you the level. I could solo up any member of the rack. I could turn off any member of the rack individually. I also have the ability to process the left, right, mid, or side signal independently. So I could set up a whole parallel chain where if I wanted essentially like a mid-side EQ, it could have this be the mid, have this be the sides, and then essentially what I would have here is a mid-side processor, basically using the full, any plugin from the Waves collection. Okay, so if I operate it here in stereo and stereo, then I'm just going to start with my original premise here, which was to do a parallel. So if I run a heavy-duty parallel here, then I could just mix this in with some heavy compression and have a listen.
I died again.
Oh, hold on. That's not what I wanted to listen to. Hold on one second.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent. I will quit it, never fix it. I will quit it, never fix it.
So within this, I can also add like another and let's just say, for example, I wanted to have like a little exciter. I could also run an exciter in parallel here and have this kind of dialed in. Again, bring this in parallel and mix that in.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to.
And actually, we should take these guys off because this is probably affecting what's going on.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends.
Oh, so this is actually one thing here. If I want, I can disable any of the plugins here, and then that will allow me to kind of operate. But otherwise, I could just take this in and out from here.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I.
Right, so you could run like a whole chain like that. If this was just on a vocal track, okay, I could run parallels, have regular processing, or maybe run a series of processing for a vocal chain, for example. Run that straight through, so this is completely unaffected, and then run parallel compression exciter chains on here, and even add in things like reverb, right? So if I wanted to add, for example, like an H reverb, I could go and add in an H reverb here, and let's just kind of call something down. This is on the full mix, so this is just going to sound silly, but just to give you an idea.
I died again. I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I.
Right, and so I'm just running this in, and I can run delays, I can run all kinds of stuff. Now, I can't automate the feeds going into any of these things, but I can automate the levels of them. I can automate any of the parameters of them and still have a clean, unaffected mix running in with the parallel. So that's one way to run this. I could turn this off. If I also ran the parallel split, I could do the other type of thing here where I do like a whole mid-side processing. In which case, let's just say that I want to run, a Fairchild here. I can also just duplicate the settings here. So let's just say that I run, a processing chain here. Let's just try something.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I.
And then I could run this over here onto the sides, and then maybe run something, with a slightly varied setting.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with an intimate distance of friendship turn toxic, codependent.
And now basically I'm operating, a pre-child, actually, which is one of the ones that you can actually run in MidSide. So I picked the wrong example, but you could do an SSL bus compressor in MidSide, which is something that you couldn't do before. And so you have all of these options, and you basically throw on any of the compression plugins. It will even do equalization and the whole thing. So you could just kind of lay it all out that way and work with it that way. In addition to all of this, as if that isn't enough, there's also a multiband split. So a multiband split basically makes this into, and since I'm just running the Fairchild Express here, let's just keep going. I can work in and set up some settings here. For example, run a full 5-band, multiband processor with any plugins from the Waves collection. So just kind of grasp onto that for a second. If you think about like all the individual plugins that you have and what that would look like. So let's set some crossover points here. Not so randomly, like 400. Let me make that like 2K. I'll make this like 6K. And all right, so I got my crossover points, which I can calibrate here. So let me just do something here where I take the low end. I could also solo up any of these bands here and kind of work with that.
I died again. Please don't tell my friend.
Right, and then I could put this, I'm just going to copy that, so that's just an Alt or Option grab.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause
and then I could drag that over into the next slot, make sure I didn't move that, all right, and then make it a little bit faster for the mid-range.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't.
And then drag it over for the upper mids.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to.
And then drag this over, do something on the top end.
I died again. Please don't tell my friends, 'cause I don't want them to cry. No, not I. It's hard to witness with.
And then basically I have a Fairchild that will run multiband. So again, you could do this with any SSL bus compressor, anything. I mean, you could put an EQ in any of these slots. There's nothing that prevents you from putting effects or anything within any of these slots. So you have all kinds of things, or even if you're running harmonics, you could have harmonics that are running just within this band and kind of do, really, super focused elements of mixing, or in this case I'm kind of having it like on the mix bus, but take any sound and you could just really focus a super heavy distortion just within a particular frequency band, all with these existing plugins that you already have. So it's not even like you're adding anything, you're just expanding the capabilities of everything that you use. You also have phase inversion switches here, and then down at the bottom you can solo up each individual section, but then you also have an S1 processor that's built in here. So within this section you have balance control, which allows you to move the signal left or right, lean it left or right if it's stereo. If it's mono, then this doesn't exist. And if you have the width control here, we can invert the left right, or we can expand the width to be a super wide, just like an S1. So we have that capability on top of it. You can then even, if you get it in just the right location, you can actually expand upon the width here. And if I grab onto this, I can actually do a full pan leaning. This is sometimes a cool thing to do with like reverbs, where you kind of mult out a reverb and you could have it basically just center to left and then just center to right, and then even invert phase and do all kinds of other things and kind of get all kinds of crazy super wide effects with stuff like that. So it's actually you could see like how this just sort of explodes and explodes and explodes, and you have all kinds of possibilities with it. So now, if that's not enough, let's just say, for example, that you needed to put like a macro. You have these macros here. The macros are essentially assignable keys. And there's loads of ways that you can assign them. One is to basically dive into the to the channel, right, that's active, and then pick the setting. And so sometimes the list, like with all these things, could be really long. But let's say I wanted to automate the gain, control on some of my settings here. So what I could do with this, for example, is I could right click on this. Oh, excuse me. Oh, not working today. All right. Oh, hold on. Let me just see here. If I go to assign mode, here we go. I have this. Then I can just click on the for one. Okay, so this is switched on to macro number 1. And now when I adjust this, it will adjust my output level from here. Now, in addition to being able to do that, I can actually do multiple parameters. So if I call up, one of the other, and just so I can show you how this is a different one, I'll pick up the other one here. Is it disappearing? Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I'm still in assign mode. Hold on. Okay. Sorry, I'm... there we go. Okay, so if I wanted to add this onto here, for example, and I'm going to put this back at its normal setting here. So that should show up there. Okay, there we go. That's what it should look like. I'm not sure why it ended up there. And okay, so you see the number there. I'm sorry about that. So I can turn this mode off, open up like another one. So we see one there. We see that one there. Now it's like I want to add this one. So I'm going to make this macro basically control all of the parameters here. So that to this, okay, we have that one on there. Now, I believe that there is, as far as I understood, there's a way here. If I right-click on it, yes, I could just add this to macro 1. So I'm doing it the hard way here. Right-click, add that to macro number 1. And now what I have here is the ability to take any of these and control all of them at the same time.
I died again. Please don't tell.
Which is just the output level, but I could automate any parameter on it. And there's a load of different ways to do it. The assign key is one way. The simplest way is just finding the parameter that you want to automate, right-clicking, and then just selecting the macro that you want to add it to. That's the other way of adding it on. All right, so I butchered that part of it, but you get the basic idea there. And then just go. In the crazy thing about this, or the crazier thing about this, if you just want to get into even more insanity, is within any one of these chains, I could add another parallel split just within this and have like a whole parallel chain that's running inside this multiband chain. And I can have parallel chains or parallel split chains that have parallel splits or multibands built right inside of it, in addition to plugins. So it's kind of like this thing where you can keep layering and layering and layering, and then it's just a matter of processing power at some point, what you run. And there's just loads of possibilities with this. Like one possibility, for example, is if you, say, have like a variety of different vocal chains. For example, you could just open up a parallel split, and let's just say that you had like 5 different chains. You could set up chain number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you could just quickly go through and A/B, right? Even if you enable all of them, because they're all running in parallel, and just kind of solo them up one at a time, and then you could do an A, B, C, D with 5 different parallel chains, up to 8 parallel chains, and then find the one that you want, deactivate the others, and then you're basically, good to go, or eliminate the others, and you're basically good to go. It's a very powerful way of just expanding everything that you already do with Waves plugins. It is exclusive to Waves plugins in this realm, so there is that limitation. But It's also a very powerful collection of plugins, well over 200 plugins that are built in there. And just these options for multiband and parallel split and all of the other crazy stuff that you can do with it. It's well worth, and the price is free. So you can't go wrong with it on that end. So anyway, there you have it. Plugin of the week. Great new powerful addition, expanding everything in the collection from Waves. It's the Waves StudioRack plugin of the week.